And on today's show, I want to talk about something I learned from one of my leadership mentors, someone who influenced me from a distance through his books and his podcast and his speaking, and how one short phone call with him several years ago changed the course of my leadership trajectory forever. Welcome to the Matt Ware Show, a podcast for leaders who want more and won't settle for less. Straight talk to help you lead better, live bolder, and not lose yourself in the process. If you're serious about going to the next level in life and leadership, you're in the right place. You know, I believe this idea of going to the next level really applies to all leaders all the time. And here's why. Because in leadership, you never arrive. You never really arrive. I don't care what your position is or what your title is, how big the corner office, how big the comp plan. You never really arrive as a leader. You never just wake up one day and say, okay, I'm good. I'm as good of a leader as I can possibly be. No, leadership is a constant journey of growing and learning and experimenting and improving, and it never really ends. Leadership is a journey more than it is a destination. It's a process more than just an end result. Leadership is both science and art. It's taught and it's caught. It's informed and it's intuitive. Leadership is the most exciting, the most exhilarating, the most exhausting pursuit that you could ever give your life to. And if you take it seriously, you know that's a journey that never ends because there's always another level to grow into in your leadership. And if you're watching or listening right now, I just want you to know I'm glad that we're on this journey together, and I hope we all keep going to the next level. Every leader has their own story, their own experience, their own path to get where they are. But I don't know any leader who achieved any level of success, any level of influence, and did it by themselves. I know we like to glamorize this idea of a self-made man or woman, and certainly there is some independence, some autonomy in leaders, right? I mean, we pull ourselves up by our bootstraps and all those kind of things, but the truth is that none of us is really able to do this by ourselves. Every leader has people in their lives who motivated them, people who modeled for them, people who mentored them along the way. And even as I say that, I'm guessing you have people who come to mind for you. Maybe it was a coach when you were in middle school or high school. Maybe it was a teacher who kind of took you under their wing. Maybe it was a boss who was a really good developer of people. Maybe it was one of your parents. People who took the time, people who took the interest to invest in you, to help you grow. It's not even always people who are up close and personal. Sometimes those people, they come into our lives somewhat from a distance. People we learn from through their books or their talks or their podcasts. People who mentor us from afar because we became students of their particular brand of leadership. We bought into their philosophy, their methodology, and over time, their ideas began to shape us and mold us and really help us become who we are today. And on today's show, I want to talk about something I learned from one of my leadership mentors, someone who influenced me from a distance through his books and his podcast and his speaking, and how one short phone call with him several years ago changed the course of my leadership trajectory forever. His name is Dr. Sam Chand. Some of you may know who he is, some of you may not, but Sam Chand is a leader's leader. He's an Indian immigrant who came to America from India in the early 1970s to go to college. He worked his way up from a dishwasher in the cafeteria to later returning and becoming the president of that same college, right? A crazy story, right? I mean, truly like the rags to riches, ultimate turnaround story. He works today as a leadership architect and coach and consultant for some of the most incredible organizations and leaders in the world. And I was first introduced to Dr. Chand at a conference in Dallas, maybe, 2010, 2012. He was delivering a keynote, and you know how sometimes you hear somebody speak and something just grabs a hold of your heart. Like it just resonates with you at this really deep level, and you just think, man, I want what they've got. Okay, and that's how I felt about him when I heard him speak. I want what he has. And so I started reading his books, several of which were really key to shaping some of my leadership philosophy. Books like Leadership Pain, Bigger, Faster Leadership, Who's Holding Your Ladder. I watched his videos, I followed him on social media, and really he became one of the key influencers in my life, in my leadership journey. And one day I had the opportunity to have a one-on-one call with him, and that marked me and my leadership in a really significant way. We all remember the chaos, the uncertainty that we were facing when the COVID pandemic hit in March of 2020. I was leading a large church at the time, and the weekend of March 15th, when every other church in the city was closing, we actually stayed open. We kind of bucked the trend. We swam upstream. We actually added more services, more opportunities for people to gather that weekend. That's a whole other story for a whole other podcast. But within a day or two after that, it became apparent we would not be able to gather in person for a while, right? Because everything was shutting down. And like everyone else, I was just trying to figure out how do I lead through this? How do I lead through a crisis? How do I lead my team? How do I lead this big organization? All these people who are looking to me for direction, for clarity, and all of that. How do I lead through the most uncharted, unprecedented times that any of us really have ever faced? And that week, I saw Sam Chan post on his Instagram that he was doing free one-on-one consultations for faith-based nonprofit leaders who wanted to have a conversation. And that seemed too good to be true. I mean, this is one of my leadership heroes who I had never really had direct access to. And I never could have afforded to actually engage as a coach at that time. And now suddenly I've got the opportunity to talk to him directly. I mean, this is a dream come true. You better believe I signed up for that. I might have been the first one. And so his team, reached out to me and set up a time and texted me so I would know, what number he was calling from. Very professional, great experience working with them. And sure enough, on Friday, March 20th, 2020, at 5:20 p.m., my phone rang and I heard this man on the other side with a thick Indian accent say, "Hello, Matt, this is Sam Chan." And I'm telling you the details and the context of all this, not just because it's a good story, but because there's something you can learn from this. See, when Sam Chan called me, I was ready for his call. And I don't just mean that I had blocked out the time on my calendar or closed the door to the office or that my AirPods were charged. I mean that I had already sat down and written out a dozen questions that I wanted to ask him. And this was only supposed to be a 10-minute phone call, right? But I learned a long time ago that when you have the opportunity to be with someone who is a mentor, someone who's an influencer, somebody who's a leader in your life, somebody that you look up to, you want to learn from, grow from, glean from, you better show up ready and you better make the most of every moment. I'm pretty sure I kept him on the phone about twice as long as he had planned. Number one, because I just kept asking questions, but number two, because he could tell I was listening, I was learning, I was leaning in. Listen, leaders want to influence people who want to be influenced. They want to influence people who want to grow. And they'll give you more than you planned. They'll give you more than they promised if they really sense that you're getting what they're giving. And that day, because I listened and I learned and I leaned in, what Sam Chan gave me changed my life and my leadership forever. Listen, word to the wise, do not waste a leader's time because they'll only let you do it once. If you have the opportunity to sit with them and speak with them and soak up something from them, show up ready, show up prepared, learn, get everything that you possibly can get from them in that moment. We spent a few minutes talking through the specifics of the organization I was leading. He gave me some helpful insight on things that I could, tweak and shift and do to be more effective in the COVID season. And we did those things. We executed on them and we saw great results from it. But the most impactful part of the conversation, the part that really marked me and changed me was this. I asked Dr. Sam Chan what we should anticipate, how we should prepare, how we could best position ourselves for the future. And keep in mind, this is March of 2020. The whole world is shutting down. The media is catastrophizing. Truly a time of unprecedented fear and uneasiness and uncertainty. And I'll never forget what he said. He said, the only thing about the future that we know for sure is that no matter what happens, we will need leaders leading. Talk about a mic drop moment. Listen, we don't know what tomorrow holds. We don't know what will happen at the macro level or the micro level. We don't know what the economy will be like, what the political climate will be like, what the culture will be like. We really don't know for sure anything about anything. But what we do know is that no matter what kind of world we live in, we will always need leaders leading. There will never be a time when we don't need good, strong, clear, courageous, confident leaders to rise up and take us into the future. The only thing about the future that we know for sure is that no matter what happens, we will need leaders leading. And that statement changed my mindset, changed my perspective, changed my philosophy on leadership in a really, really significant way. See, it's easy for people who are in leadership roles to think that they're doing a good job as a leader if they get more people to follow them, right? Get more customers, more clients, more members, more subscribers, more employees. I mean, I feel like I'm really leading if more people are following. But Ralph Nader said it this way. He said the function of leadership is to produce more leaders, not more followers. In other words, at its essence, at its core, a leader's job is not to create more followers. It's actually to create more leaders. Your effectiveness as a leader, your impact as a leader, your legacy as a leader is not how many followers did you get. It's how many leaders did you grow. Leaders should be creating more leaders. That was Sam Chan's charge to me on that phone call. It wasn't going to be enough for me to be a good leader in my own right anymore. It wasn't going to be enough that I could navigate through COVID and keep the organization afloat and wade through all the murky waters and the economic challenge and the morale issues and the external pressures and the internal confusion. Yes, good leaders had to do all of those things. But what he challenged me to do is to realize that my number one job as a leader was to create more leaders. My number one responsibility was to ensure the sustainability of our organization, not just for today, but for tomorrow. And that the only way to do that would be to create more leaders. Why? Because we know that no matter what happens, we're going to need leaders leading. And the only one who can make sure there are leaders leading in the future of my organization is me. And in the same way, the only one who can make sure there are leaders leading in the future of your organization is you. He spent the rest of that phone call laying out a strategy for how to do that, how to make sure your organization has leaders leading. And that's what I want to spend the rest of this episode talking about. He challenged me to make sure that I had leaders leading in the months and years that would follow COVID. And to do that, I would have to do three things. He said you need to discover, you need to develop, and you need to deploy. Discover, develop, and deploy. You need to discover leaders, you need to develop leaders, and you need to deploy leaders. Let's talk about those three things, starting number one with discover. Listen, I don't know anything about your situation or the specifics of your circumstances. I don't know about the industry that you're in or the environment that you're in right now. I don't know the size of your organization, the scope of the impact that you have. I don't know anything about your staff, team, or volunteers or partners or vendors. I don't know about your goals or your vision. I don't know about your strengths or limitations. I don't know about your obstacles. I don't know about your opportunities. I don't know a thing about your situation. But one thing I know for sure, no matter what, is that in and around your organization right now, there are leaders waiting to be discovered. There are people in your orbit who are leaders in the making, leaders in the waiting, people who have untapped potential, people who have undeveloped purpose. In every organization that I've ever worked in, that I've ever worked with, there were leaders who were just waiting to be discovered. And sometimes they didn't even know they were leaders. They didn't know that they needed to be discovered. Sometimes we can see leadership on someone. The way they speak, the way they carry themselves, the way they think, the way they make decisions, the way they interact with people. There are people who, when they come to us, they already carry a leadership presence, a leadership bearing. They've got gravitas. These are people who know they are leaders, even if it's not in their title or their job description, even if they can't fully understand it or articulate it. Deep down inside, they know they're a leader. But there are other people who may not show those same outward obvious signs. And it's our responsibility to discover that in them. It's our responsibility to mine it out of them. I live in Colorado. We've got this great history, of the Old West and the gold and silver rushes and all of that. And sometimes people would come across a gold nugget in a river, right? I mean, they just walked down to the stream to get water and there's a gold nugget. But other times they had to dig the gold out of the mountain. And as a leader, you're going to have people in your organization who are gold nuggets just waiting to be picked up. And you're also going to have other people who need to be mined out. Your job as the leader is to discover other leaders, no matter what form or fashion they come to you in, because a leader's job is to create more leaders. We can spend a whole episode or probably several episodes talking specifically about, what you should be looking for, the qualities and the skill sets and the mindsets and the character traits and attitudes and aptitudes, like all these things that potential leaders need to have. But the reality is that you know what you need in your organization. You know the types of people who thrive in your environment. You know the kinds of qualities and characteristics that just seem to work for you. They work for your team. And by the way, if you haven't really thought about it, if you haven't even written it down, I want to challenge you to do that. How will you know that you've discovered it if you haven't even defined it? I mean, how will you know what you're looking for if you haven't thought about it, if you haven't taken the time and the energy to put into saying, this is what I want, this is what I'm looking for? How will you discover it if you haven't defined it? How will you discover the kind of leader you need if you can't even define the kind of leaders that you want? Let me give you a few things that I look for in potential leaders. I look for people who take initiative. I want people who look for things to do, not wait to be told what to do. I look for people who see what needs to improve and they start working on it. They don't wait for me to see it and then assign it to them. I look for people who are passionate. I want them to carry energy and enthusiasm for what they do and why they do it. I mean, from my perspective, if you aren't excited to show up for work, you shouldn't be in a leadership role. I look for people who take responsibility, people who own it. Even if it doesn't go according to plan, even if it all goes wrong, they own it. They take it personally. They act like owners and not employees. I look for character over competence. I look for attitude over aptitude. I look for people who live by a compass and not a clock. I look for people who lean in rather than lean out. I look for people who can take feedback and handle criticism and people who can embrace pain. You discover people like that in your organization, and I promise you are discovering leaders. Let's move on to number 2. First, we discover leaders, and then number 2, we develop them. We develop them. The problem is that it's not enough to discover leaders. You have to develop leaders. Just because you found someone who in their raw form has all the makings of a great leader doesn't mean you can just leave them in their raw form. Look, great leaders are not born great leaders. They may have potential, they may have promise, they may have all the ingredients they need to get there, but they have to be trained. They have to be developed. They've got to be mentored. They've got to be invested in, poured into, shaped, molded. Great leaders are not born, they are built. Think about it this way. Even the best, most successful, most talented college football quarterback, the ones who have all the raw skills and characteristics to become NFL greats, to become Hall of Famers, they aren't just drafted and then left to their own devices. Right? I mean, when they get drafted, they get put into a system that teaches them and trains them and develops them. They get a position coach, they get a strength coach, they get a nutritionist. Why? Because they understand great quarterbacks aren't born, they are built. And I've seen too many leaders who think they can just spot someone with talent, with aptitude, and then thrust them into a leadership position, and they'll be fine. They'll figure it out. And I'm sorry to admit that I've done that a few times myself, and it just doesn't work, right? I mean, we get excited because we want to build a team or we want to develop leaders and maybe we need help and we see somebody who looks like a like an up-and-comer. They've got a star over their head, right? I mean, they look like they could really do what it takes. And so we thrust them into that role, and we don't realize they have to be developed. They can't just be discovered. They have to be developed. And your job, if you're the leader, is to develop other leaders. If you're the CEO, if you're the owner, if you're the project manager, if you're the team leader, whatever your role is, if you have leadership influence, it's your job to build and raise up other leaders. And, again, we could spend a whole episode on how to do this, but I want to zoom in on one way that you can do this that I happen to think is the most effective way, and that is through delegation. The most effective way to develop potential leaders is to delegate to those potential leaders. See, the problem is too often we think delegation means just getting someone else to do the task we don't want to do. Get someone else to do the stuff we don't like, we're not good at, it takes too much time, it's not our highest or best contribution to the organization. And if that is the extent to which you see delegation, I just want you to know you are missing out on a massive opportunity. Because delegation can be a strategic way of giving up-and-coming leaders the responsibility and accountability and ownership that they need to grow into that role. You can see how they manage time, how they take initiative, how they handle adversity, how they leverage resources, how they galvanize support. Delegation done right can be one of the most intentional ways to invest in and coach people who have upward potential in your organization. I think delegation is just development in disguise. And that's why the best leaders don't use delegation as a way to dump their list. They use it as a way to develop their leaders. And I know what you're thinking, like, man, that sounds like a lot of work, right? I mean, isn't it easier? Isn't it faster to just do the thing myself? Or to just get it off my desk to the first person who will take it and get it done so I don't have to think about it, I don't have to worry about it anymore? And the problem with that is that it's so short-sighted that it really doesn't do anything for you. It doesn't do anything for them, and it doesn't do anything for your organization after that task is crossed off the to-do list. I mean, it might take care of an issue today, but it doesn't build anything for tomorrow. What it does is it creates a follower. It doesn't create a leader. And your job is to create more leaders. We need leaders leading in our organization, which means we have to discover leaders. We have to develop leaders. And number 3, we have to deploy leaders. We have to deploy them. Okay, what does it mean to deploy? Well, it means that you have to actually let them lead. And that sounds like it'd be a good thing, right? I mean, you've done the work to discover them and see what is so obvious on the surface, or maybe see what's under the surface, all the latent, dormant things that they've got that can be drawn out, can be mined out. You've developed them not because you sat in a classroom, in front of a whiteboard, but you delegated real responsibilities to them so they could be tested and trained, and you could know what they're made of, and you saw how they responded to coaching and critiquing and all of that as they grew and mature. But the real test is, will you deploy them? Will you actually let them lead within your organization? And it sounds easy, right? I mean, it sounds so simple and obvious, but this is where a lot of leaders really struggle. This is where they stall out on their responsibility to create other leaders. There's so many times we get someone ready, but we won't release them. We help them learn, but we don't let them launch. We might employ them, but we don't empower them. We might develop them, but we don't deploy them. One of the greatest disservices you can do to a potential leader in your organization is to discover and develop them, but not deploy them. To see their potential, but not give them the opportunity to step into it. There are a lot of reasons that turnover happens on your team, but if you're losing good people, this is something you better pay attention to. Because there's nothing that makes good leaders exit your team more than realizing they have to go to another place to step into their potential. That they will have to leave in order to lead. And the truth is that deploying leaders in your organization is scary sometimes. All the things that go through your mind when you think about this, they probably are valid. I mean, the truth is they don't know as much as you do. They can't do it as well as you can. They don't have all the history and the background and the context. They don't have the relationships and the buy-in and the credibility and the consensus. They don't know all the unwritten rules. They don't know where the landmines are. They don't know where the bodies are buried. They don't know anything. But if you don't let them lead, how are they ever going to grow? And if you don't let them lead, how is your organization ever going to grow? A lot of leaders will hold back the up-and-comers because they say, well, they can't do it as well as I can. And if that's you, I just want to say this to you. You may be right. It's very possible that they can't do it as well as you can yet. But if you'll give them the opportunity to grow, to learn, to practice, if you'll deploy them and give them a chance, get them on the field, put the ball in their hands, it's possible that one day they'll not only do it as good as you, they may even do it better than you. In fact, I've heard some leadership experts suggest that if someone can lead something 50% as well as you can, but they're growing, they're learning, they're teachable, they're coachable, they've got upward potential, even at only 50% effectiveness today, it's worth deploying them and letting them grow because it will make you and your organization better down the road. Is it scary to give someone who's only half as good as you the opportunity to take something and run with it? Absolutely. It's terrifying. And I'm not suggesting you should do that without guardrails or checks and balances or accountability. There are tactical things you need to do to help them and safeguard your organization and set them up for success. Listen, it might be scary to discover and develop and deploy other leaders. It's scary to trust other people with the thing that you poured your heart and soul into, that you gave blood, sweat, and tears to. It's hard to let go and let other people speak on your behalf, act on your behalf. It's scary to give other leaders a seat at the table, to give them a voice in the decisions. But it's even scarier if you don't. Because if there isn't room for anyone else to lead besides you, your organization is already declining, it's already dying, and you just don't know it yet, or you're not willing to admit it yet. Your job as a leader is not to gather more followers. Your job as a leader is to grow more leaders. That's what I learned from Dr. Sam Chan that day on that phone call. One call, one conversation that changed my view of leadership and changed the trajectory that I would take from that day forward. From that moment, I threw myself wholeheartedly, not just into leading, but into leading more leaders. I began actively, intentionally making leadership discovery and development and deployment one of the explicit focuses of what I did and what our organization did. I just decided this is something I'm going to be known for. This is something our organization is going to be known for. Over the months that followed during COVID, we discovered and developed and deployed dozens of leaders. We started new programs, we launched new initiatives, we opened new locations, we saw more impact, we saw more influence during that time period than we had in years prior to that. All because of this one simple idea, that no matter what happens, we need leaders leading. I am eternally grateful to Dr. Sam Chan for what he deposited into me that day on that phone call. In 15 or 20 minutes, he changed my life and changed my leadership. And so, Dr. Chan, if you ever come across this podcast, I just want you to know from the bottom of my heart, thank you. You impacted me in a greater way than you ever could have known. And that's part of why I do what I do today, because I want to see leaders leading. And if you're watching or listening right now, I believe the same is true for you. You need to see leaders leading in your organization too. You need to discover and develop and deploy them, because your job is not to create more followers. Your job is to create more leaders. Thank you for joining me today on the Matt Ware Show. And if this was helpful to you, challenging to you, would you share it with somebody you know, somebody else who could benefit from it? And if you're not already, subscribe so that you get notified every time a new episode drops. And if you want to connect with me, you can find me at themattware.com and at themattware on all the social channels. I also have a free email newsletter that I send out every week with leadership thoughts and insights, and so you can sign up for that. Until next time, go lead better and live bolder.